So can we talk about how Impact has kind of seen like the biggest growth as far as with WWE having to cut so much bait on their contracts? Like the talent level on Impact for years was dwindling because WWE was just buying guys up and saying, "Here's $1 million for the year. You know, we know nobody compete. You're going to sit on the shelf, but you know you're not going to provide the competition or anything." And then when midway through COVID, WWE starts going through their contracts and saying, "You know what? We're going to cut bait on this." Like Gallows and Anderson had like a month on their contract. Like they did the Boneyard match and then didn't show up for a month, and then all of a sudden they were on Impact.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of been interesting to see that the revival of Impact through the fact that COVID caused WWE to have to cut bait on a lot of their contracts.
Yeah.
WWE was, and I think Gallows and Anderson talked about this like on the very first podcast they did after their 90 days was up. They're like, yeah, we took the money from WWE because they were paying us a ridiculous amount of money. Like, of course we're gonna take it. Like,
yeah,
are you
right.
crazy? Like Anderson's got kids and they've got investments. And they don't want to wrestle forever. They're both getting up there in age. Carl is over 40 now, I think, and then Gallows, I know he's had some knee problems. These guys don't want to wrestle forever. They were probably going to get as much money as they can, have a nice little nest egg, and show up and throw a couple guys out of a battle royal at a high school gymnasium, later in life. Like, I'm sure they don't want to keep doing all the crazy matches that they've done over the course of their careers forever. And, I think what's started to kind of happen now with some of the talent, and, it's just my opinion, I feel like some of them have seen these guys, yes, they've been getting paid a ton of money to just do nothing but sit at catering or whatever it is. But then, they start seeing these guys start getting their contracts cut. WWE needs to get rid of these guys. I'm like, well, shit, maybe I should stay where I'm at and kind of create my own path in wrestling. And I feel like a lot of the promotions have all started to kind of find like their own thing, as opposed to just being like, we're going to try to be WWE, but better, or try to compete directly with WWE. I feel like more than ever, and this is the first time in a long time, all the promotions have kind of found their own thing. Like MLW is basically like MMA wrestling, like the way they present it, stuff they call the matches, fights, that sort of thing. But it's still wrestling, but they do things that are a little bit different. Like Impact has started to kind of lean into almost like the silly cinematic side of things. Like they had the Who Shot Johnny Bravo thing.
Yes.
Like Rosemary is like literally like a time traveling demon, that sort of thing. ROH, they kind of delved into like sort of the same area like MLW has,
like
but
pure wrestling.
Yeah, but it's more serious, I would say, than MLW. It presents itself like it's almost a straight up shoot.
Right.
And then, of course, you've got AEW. AEW is its own thing.
WWE's all over the fucking place.
Yeah.
Yeah, chime in here, Kaz.
They've really just gone straight like Hollywood with a lot of shit, with a lot of the storylines. Do you remember that match? It was like the Viking Raiders versus Street Profits versus somebody else. It was like some wild backstage brawl with ninjas, and it ended up in a dumpster with like a monster and shit.
Yeah,
remember that match?
Yeah.
Then you got the stuff with Orton and the Fiend, and which it's entertaining. I've learned to like take a step back and just be like, okay, this is just what WWE is now.
And
I guess it's kind of always been that way, but I think they've taken it to that next cinematic movie type level to where it's just beyond belief sometimes.
I think there's room for a promotion to just do nothing but those cinematic matches.
And I think Vince would love that.
Yeah, like the promos for Lucha Underground were basically just scenes of a movie instead of a traditional promo. I'm surprised that there's not been I'm sure it would probably be maybe
they were at the
film.
forefront of that.
Yeah. And I know Impact has kind of taken a little bit of that and kind of leaned into that, but they don't have necessarily maybe the budget or structure that Lucha Underground did to have that, because Robert Rodriguez, that was his network. He had a big say in producing it. So they were able to pull that off. They had the talent in place to be able to film things like that. WWE might not necessarily have that. They'd have to bring in outside, camera operators, directors of photography for that sort of thing. But I think that there is a spot for a company to do almost all entirely cinematic stuff.
Is WWE Film Studios still operating, or did they finally shutter that? I know for a while.
I know they still put their name on stuff. But...
They don't produce movies. I think they just basically what's the word that I'm looking for? I should know it. It's like a publisher for a video game. Mm-hmm. They're not the ones that actually create it. Like THQ is just a publisher. They're like, okay, you guys make the game and we'll put it out, put our name on it. Yeah, WWE, they're distribution. They do distribution.
Yes.
And they make a fucking killing off of that, because they realize instead of producing our own movies, let's just distribute movies and we'll make a bunch of money off that. And that's how they've kind of strangely got their name on a couple of movies that are actually pretty decent. It's because they don't make them, they just distribute them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Hey, we got a run-in, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, my dog Riley is. I think my wife finally got sick and tired of her upstairs and threw her in the basement. Threw her in the basement with me.
Get some kisses.
Yeah, she's she's been having the real hard time this pandemic.
Do you have a chair there you could slap the arms on?
Actually, I do over in the corner, but it's not like the same material, so it won't make the same noise. It's more of a cloth chair, so it doesn't have like that faux leather like.
Let's see. I got. We just got a computer chair from I think Amazon. So let's see if I can recreate this. Anyone listening to this is gonna hate me for this, but for old time's sake.
There you go. John's living nightmare.
Yes,
right.
Every time Sean was a very handsy person when he talked. Boom, boom, boom.
We in the show's history, we've had some people do some hilariously not aware of the microphone type of things.
Oh yeah, man.
Like clicking pencils, twisting water bottles, that sort of thing. I remember that because I was in my house in the early days of TAWF, and John just casually reached out and just pushed the water bottle down.
I was like, he thought I was holding his hand.
I remember looking at his face.
The water bottle.
Yeah, it's just the water bottle, dude. You got to stop. Because people would carry over the tics and things that they do when they talk. They're not aware that gets picked up by the microphone. So
I remember walking in one day. John had gotten there before me because generally I was one of the first ones to walk in, and John was sitting in the chair I normally sat in, and he finally explained it to me. He's like, "You talk with your hands and you keep hitting this chair, and I spend so much of my time trying to edit out your chair hits. I'm tired of it." So then I got to sit in the cloth couch, and then my thud just became.
It was a silent thud.
So, I talked about the stuff that I've been watching. Is there any matches like I was saying that you guys would recommend? I know, Kaz, I want to ask you because you haven't talked that much. I feel like a teacher calling out the student that's sitting quiet in the back of the class. But is there anything that you really can praise?
Remember you sending? I think it was you. It was Shibata versus Akiyama.
Oh baby,
Noah, I believe, was it?
Oh yes.
I recently watched
Wrestle
that.
One.
I recently watched that and was like, wow, that was awesome. Shibata was a heel. I kind of got the feeling for.
I think he was a heel because he had kind of this how do I describe it? Like MMA Bruiser Brody sort of vibe to him when he left
led
New
him
Japan.
to Noah right there? Was that right when he left New Japan and went there?
He floated around New Japan, or he left New Japan, then he floated around a bunch of different places. He had a stint in fighting that didn't go so well. He was a freelancer for a really long time, and I can't remember the exact reason why he left New Japan, but I remember management really liking him They really wanted to push him, especially in that era of like they call it Inokiism with like the MMA tough guys.
Yeah.
But man, that dude, he could lay in some strikes. Like we joked, Kaz and I, we've joked. We're like, did anybody tell him this wasn't real?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that I went on a tear with that after you guys were recommending those. I really liked that Noah New Japan back and forth that was going on at that time. And I know that is a time where a lot of wrestling fans didn't like it, but holy shit, I could have watched Shibata all day.
I also came across a very odd match. It was Scott Hall versus a very young Tanahashi. You guys see that?
No.
It's a New Japan show, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
weird. It's like Scott's getting to that point where he's real fucked up.
Yeah.
It's just a weird match. He doesn't let Tanahashi get anything in. It's just
Tana like
quick match too.
Doesn't Tana beat him with like a roll up or something?
No, Scott beats him.
They had another match, I think, where
really?
Tana gets his ass kicked, but then I think Tana beats him with a roll up.
Well, this one I watched, he hit him with the Razor's Edge, and that was a wrap.
Was it young boy Tana, like black shorts Tana?
No, he was in some gear.
Huh. Oh, there's a weird period when Tanahashi, I think, went to Noah, and he hadn't won. I don't think he had won the heavyweight title yet, but he was starting to get pushed. It was like his pre-Ric Flair era. Like Ric Flair was kind of burly and beefy, like before the plane crash. Yeah, I think it's like Tanahashi before he got stabbed. So he was like kind of burly and Noah.
Yeah,
like
right.
He was like kind of like not cut, but like just big, like burly ass dude, like big barrel chest. And I mean, now it's crazy. The dude's like 45 and he looks like a statue. But yeah, it's a weird, like the weird points in wrestlers' early careers. Where you're like, oh wow, they seem like almost a different person, or the trajectory of their career seems like it was going a different path. The very first Wrestle Kingdom, Nakamura loses to Kawada of all things. I watched the first Wrestle Kingdom probably 2 weeks ago. It's a very strange show. Very weird. I mean, because you get a lot of young versions of the staples of New Japan now.
Yeah.
But they're very different because, for some of the older guys, they're moving around and quick and like, or Yano is like kind of slim. It's very weird.
Is that the main event?
No, the main event, I think it was, I want to say,
that was 15 years ago.
Hashimoto might have passed away recently because the main event I think is Muto and maybe Chono against someone else. Let me look now, because when I watched it, I'm like, man, this is such a weird show. And I think also it was kind of getting towards the New Japan that we know and love, like kind of in between the Inoki era and then the New Japan era. So let's run through this card real quick. Gato and Jado, they beat Mazada and Nosawa. Ishii, Makabe, and Yano beat Bull Buchanan, Tomko, and D'Lo Brown in a 6-man tag.
Wow.
Ricky Choshu was in a match. There was a 10-man tag. It was Kaz Hayashi, Koji Kanemoto, Taka, Tiger Mask, Wotaro Inoue versus CTU, which is Liger, Milano Collection AT, Minoru not Suzuki, Tanaka, and then the Voodoo Murders, who are Brother Yashi and Suji Kondo, who's a staple.
Which Tiger King are we talking about here?
Or Tiger Mask 4.
Tiger Mask.
Yes, it's always Tiger Mask 4 if it's after like 1996 or 7, I think. Minoru Suzuki, he faced Nagata for the Triple Crown title, and this was pushed as the final match in their rivalry. And then they ended up facing each other a couple of more times after that. Hiroshi Tanahashi defended the IWGP title against Teo Kia, who I think was also a staple of All Japan. He's a Hawaiian guy. The main event was Muto and Chono versus Tenkoji, which is Tenzan and Kojima. So yeah, it's I guess now in hindsight, it's not that weird of a card. because all of these guys who are old now are in their prime then. But I guess if you're watching New Japan now and you really only know New Japan now, it's probably weird to see these old guys like being in great shape and being on top
right.
and dominating matches.
Now there was a belt called the Triple Crown belt.
It was the All Japan belt. The Triple Crown is All Japan's
okay.
belt. Yeah.
Okay.
So Wrestle Kingdom, I think, was supposed to kind of be like a joint show. They were trying, and it was the 35th anniversary for New Japan. Yeah, so I think they were trying to make it like this co-promoted show, but then it ended up just kind of becoming New Japan's thing.
So I've been watching, like, going back and watching Tanahashi matches, and then I missed a lot of the 2018 G1, and so him versus Coda in the 2018 G1 just blew my mind.
Oh, that match was fantastic.
Oh my goodness. The G1, man, like there's so many gems that I've probably missed or skipped because there's so many
That might be
matches
one
in
of
the
the greatest
G1.
matches ever. That might be the greatest match ever. Kota Tanahashi at that 2000, is it 18?
18,
final?
yeah.
That crowd is hot. See, watching that and then where we're at today, it's like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
I watched Kenny Omega versus Tanahashi from Wrestle Kingdom, I think 2 years ago now, or I guess it would be 3 years ago now.
That was a good one.
Yeah, but people kind of forget it because Omega left right after, then, All Elite Wrestling ended up becoming a thing. But I feel like it's kind of this is a really good match, like extremely good match. And it's crazy to think of just all these awesome matches that you've seemingly forgotten about. And I would give an arm and a leg just to experience like one of those matches with the crowd again. Because I miss the sound of a crowd.
Oh, it's even worse for New Japan in my book. Because their style of wrestling is just so more real and or violent. And you're like really into it. And when the crowd's like, especially a Japanese crowd, when they're fucking hype, something's cooking in that ring.
Yeah.
Man, just hearing the clap, all you hear is clapping.
Yeah,
just the clapping to the strong style is just not.
Yeah, and they're trying to play to the crowd, and it's just.
Kaz, how do you think that Jeff Cobb Shingo match would have been able to play out with the crowd being able to really get into it like they wanted? Because Jake New has talked a couple of times to me about how Shingo is a master at like keeping the crowd with him. Like he can sense it. He has this it's almost like a radar sixth sense. Like he'll do these little things to get the crowd right back into the match if there's any sort of lull. And
it's got to be hard for those guys.
Yeah.
For all of them. I mean, I feel bad for them in a way. Like that's how these wrestlers know what to do, when to do it at some points in the match. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What level the crowd's at, and especially inside the Tokyo Dome, and everyone's just is only able to clap. It's got to be just like demoralizing and awful. I mean, it was a good match. Don't get me wrong, but again, it's just hard. It was hard to get into any of those matches.
Yeah,
Okada Ospreay was probably the best match of Wrestle Kingdom in my eyes, but it's just hard to get into any of them.
I mean, professional wrestling having its roots in like sideshow and like a crowd being there and that being like what they're going to do, like the crowd getting hype into that, and it's always been a part of it. And now we're having to finally like experience it with like nothing. It might as well just be the gobbledygooker coming out of the damn egg each time and everybody being disappointed.
And you can look at like WWE and I guess you take your hat off to them trying something different with the Thunderdome thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like they pipe in so much bullshit fake
noise.
The
fake noise.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Like chanting like, like there's nobody there chanting.
My hobby now is looking to see how many Chris Benoits I can find before they get taken down.
Yeah, before they
kibosh on that one quick.
I was gonna say, Kaz, wasn't there in the Thunderdome someone that picked out them taking audio from one of the video games because you could hear like a faint John Cena chant.
Yeah. It's totally all video game like noise.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
It's like I go back to that the one match that they did good at, I thought, with all that was that Randy Orton Edge, like, greatest wrestling match of all time. Remember that match?
Yeah, because they said that we were gonna add in audio noise to make it feel like there's a crowd there. I was like, okay, I can get with that.
It was cool. It was cool with that match.
Yeah,
It made it feel like there were people there. It made it feel alive. But they've gotten worse and worse with it. I've noticed, where it's just louder and it's like overbearing and it's so annoying.
Hey man, Vince going deaf. He needs to hear it.
and because it's not real noise, I don't understand how they haven't figured out a way to just take the audio of real crowds that they've had before and just use that, because it's clearly like video game noise. Like, crowds just don't sound like that. Crowds don't like fade in and out like that.
You can go into FIFA 2021 and find better noise for the wrestling crowds.
Yeah, they,
Go ahead, John.
No, I was just gonna say, like, there was a time period where I was just watching Raw highlights on YouTube, and they would do that. They would just simulate noise. Like, people would take clips of the live show versus the highlight reel, and they'd be like, no, this is the true fan reaction. Here's what they did. But you could even tell when you're watching it, you're like, oh my God, man, they just cannot get this right. Like, it took the wind out of the sails, like, watching it. And I'm like, just give me the normal reaction. Don't give me what Vince wants me to think that I want to watch, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's been known to do that in the past.
Yeah.
With, what was it? The Roman Reigns Triple H main event?
Yeah.
Even further back than that, man. They've been speaking audio for years. I remember when I was a kid, like, old WWF shows, it seemed like the crowd was just always alive. Because, we always go back with those rose-tinted glasses and think, like, oh, it was so much cooler when we were kids. Like,
yeah, right.
What happened? And you go back and watch, like, even, like, old Saturday Night's Main Event, you're like, holy shit, they sweeten this crowd like crazy. You look at the crowd, they're just sitting there.
Yeah, I know.
And then, and then even the, like, Coliseum video, man, they change everything. Like, a real reaction to the Royal Rumble, where the crowd is pissed when Hogan distracts Sid and Flair wins. Crowd is pissed. They wanted Sid to win, and they booed Hogan, and they changed it where the crowd was like, yeah, Hogan's awesome. But everyone knows people were sick of Hogan's shit, and they changed it, because they've
done that all over the network, haven't they? With a lot of matches.
Yeah, dude. When I was working today, I had a second monitor down in the basement where I work at, and I just had their YouTube stream of all the War Games matches, I think, leading up to the most recent War Games from last month.
Yeah.
And dude, they do all kinds of weird edits. They edit out, of course, Britt Baker when Ciampa hits the air raid crash off the cage and the tables. Yeah. They edit her straight out. They did a weird edit where Eric Young is trying to get up with the chair, but because of the way he has the chair posted to get up, it's right by his head, and Cole hits the last shot into the chair, into his head. They edit him out doing that, and it's like, that was from like 3 years ago. You guys wanted him to do that. That was the finish, and then they edited it out because they just, no chairs to the head. So, like, it's very strange. Like, and then all the audio edits, all the changes, what people say in the matches, like, editing those out.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it is. It definitely is. It makes you think you're going crazy, because you're like, I remember it this way. And thank God for people on the internet too, because of that, because then you find the original and you're like, okay, so I'm not crazy. I'm not stupid. I think one of my favorite moments too is taking fan reactions from one match and putting them in the other match. And like, I remember on Squared Circle, like, the dude, would be doing the Surrender Cobra thing, and it would be on a Roman Reigns match, and like, everyone's making fun of me. He was like, no, man. He was like, that was the Daniel Bryan match, and they just took that and they put it in on this one. And he was like, I was so bummed to see that, because I knew I was going to get shit on. I was thinking, it's just crazy that, the victors change history or whatever, it's so weird to me that it's like, hey, we're going to write history in our own way, and we just can't can't leave it for the raw realness that it was.
Although some stuff they probably should edit out. Like if you go on YouTube and you look up, I think John's smiling because he might know where I'm going with this. If you go on YouTube and you look up a certain mixed tag match with a certain muscle-bound wrestler from Bay City, Michigan, he may or may not have asked a young wrestler named Jacqueline Gaeta what she was doing in the ring. And if you look that match up, it's definitely muted. And I can understand why they would edit something like that out.
Yeah.
Because that is a fucking insane thing for anyone to ever say in the middle of wrestling. That in 1992, 2002, I mean, we've joked about it, but I can't believe he said that.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, seriously, I'm kind of in the lost here.
Okay. All right. Please forgive me.
Brother.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
TAWF having technical difficulties right now.
I'm gonna reenact it, so please, no one get upset with me. And there's a funny Chris Hero offshoot story of this, so I guess I can tell that too right after. I thought I told this on the show before.
I don't think I think you have told this. I don't remember the Chris Hero bit though.
So there's a match. I think it's Trish and Scott Steiner, or maybe Stacy Keibler and Scott Steiner against Jackie Gaeta and someone, and I think maybe Chris Nowinski.
Rico wasting no time tagging in Miss Jackie Gaeta. Oh, I know she doesn't want a piece of Scott Steiner.
And then Chris Hero, to tie that into his story, when he was touring Noah, he walked up to Misawa in a tag match, and he just, for whatever reason, thought he was going to do this to Misawa. He sticks his hand out, and he says, like, to shake his hand, he goes, "You gonna suck my dick or what?" And Misawa looks at him kind of weird, because the Japanese wrestlers are kind of weird about shaking hands. They don't understand why you would shake hands like before a wrestling match. And Misawa looks at him. Misawa looks at him like very confused. It just shakes his hand. He has this weird face, like, what the fuck was that? Because he thought he said, "Are you gonna shake my hand or what?"
That's fantastic.
Yes. Chris Hero
funny.
trolling the late great Mitsuharu Misawa.
Not to get off topic, really, but did you see? I don't know. I think it was recent. Like Lita did like a Twitch thing, like a Q&A or something. And
I saw that.
Like during that like in-ring sex thing she did with Edge, she really, really didn't want to do that, and neither did Edge. But for some reason, Vince was like all for it and wanted it to go through. And apparently she said that Vince like said, "We'll fire you if you don't do this."
Oh, holy shit. I didn't hear this.
Did any of you guys hear that?
Yeah.
No, but it doesn't surprise me.
But
I saw
John
that.
Cena, Edge, and Lita tried to like talk Vince out of it, and he just wasn't having it.
Jeez.
That's her story. I mean, I'm sure. It's
I mean, Vince is the guy who said the N-word on live TV in Detroit.
In Detroit,
so-
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if he threatened to fire her.
Because she was gone pretty much soon after that, I believe.
Yeah, right after, I think maybe the beginning of that next year. Because that was like 2005. They did the live sex celebration. And like her actual like bare breast was exposed.
Out,
And she hated it. She absolutely hated doing that because of what happened with real life. And then they put her with Edge. And then so they made her character basically where she was like this. They called her openly a slut. And like her gimmick was getting slut shamed.
Yeah.
And she really lost her love for wrestling, I think, at that point. So then she ended up wanting to leave. And when she was leaving, they basically buried her on the way out. They had Crime Time auction off her her bag, like with all her gear in it. And then I think they implied that she had a vibrator or a dildo in there or something. Wow. They had her lose in like 30 seconds to Mickie James, I think, for what was supposed to be her retirement match. She just got her ass beat. Like the way out was pretty wild. The way they presented her and treated her like didn't seem that great.
It's so weird to think of like 15 years ago still going through like this shit because it doesn't fly now. Like, and this was like me, like through quarantine, everybody's been kind of going back watching like old TV shows and stuff. So I just kind of threw on How I Met Your Mother, and like it's not like the worst show, but it does have its moments. And I'm just like sitting there like, and it's like 2007 is like the first season, and I'm like, holy hell, man! Some of these jokes would not be flying today.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. There was a switch, like a switch went off somewhere in the 2010s where everyone was just like, you know what, this isn't really funny. This isn't. There's nothing humorous about this. We should actually be ashamed of ourselves. And so I think for the better, some stuff has changed.
Well, wrestling might be the worst in that aspect. WWE.
Oh yeah. Vince hasn't changed. Vince is still the same.
I mean, some of the shit that we watched as kids growing up, is just unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. Yeah, it definitely
was on
is.
live TV. Monday nights. Like,
the Steve Austin Pillman thing still always like straight just comes to my mind as something that would never fly today. I'm just guy walking in with a gun and then a gun going off, or at least a fake gun going off.
Oh man. Yeah, no, that one, Pillman 9mm.
I found out that someone posted something funny on Twitter earlier. I came across. I think it was when like Vince was feuding with God or whatever, and he goes into a church and he puts his hands in the holy water.
In the holy water, he like washes his hands. Yeah,
puts the water in his mouth, and he walks up like all Vince, looks around, and he still has the water in his mouth, and then he does like the Triple H spit thing.
Oh yes,
water. I say
like
speaking
water.
of
like Shane's like, you can't do that.
Speaking of Vince and Triple H, I think when they
this recently too.
Yeah, this is crazy. Speaking of things that I can't believe used to fly.
Come on out, you rapist!
Wow.
That dude ended up becoming his son-in-law. Like, I can't believe that they like, I don't understand. That whole storyline is strange. Like, you could not do that storyline today.
You could do the Katie Vick one threw everybody off even when it was happening.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I remember that happening, and I was, it was like 13, and of course, like when you're that age as a kid, or especially guys our age, you try to be like an edgelord. But even for me, I was like, this is fucking weird, man. Like, why is this happening?
Well, there was like the whole storyline where like Stephanie was like saying that Vince was like pimping her out to like all his rich buddies when she was a kid.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, man. Yeah.
It gets dark in the WWE.
Vince really went to the edge, and then somebody started, when the company went public, it started a pullback a little bit. But I still think he has like these thoughts of like doing the same things he did in the late 90s, early 2000s that got a reaction, but the world has changed, and now it would just be the most negative reaction anybody could think of.
Or his thought process on things, at least I'm assuming his thought process on things, or at least the people around him, is very much that of like an old middle-aged person who just like has this completely warped view on things. Like Retribution, Kaz, I know we talked about this a couple of times. Kaz tweeted, is like, oh, is this an Antifa group? And someone got really mad at Kaz for saying that. It's like, this is very clearly like a mock-up of what people
what he would
Antifa is.
Yeah,
exactly right.
And you have Vince's wife in the Trump administration, and they're all talking about Antifa at that point in time. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and they introduced Retribution doing these things when all of the protests and things were happening around the country.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the timing, like, you can't tell me that it was just a coincidence.
And they were coming in just destroying things. It was like the ring, like chainsawing the ring and stuff. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is clear tie-ins to where you're saying the protesters are destroying everything.
Yeah, and then they kept saying that they were standing for change and they were there to like tear down the system, but they didn't really have any actual clear like goal in mind for what they were going to do. They just were causing chaos for the sake of it, but just saying that they were going to change things is like, you can't pull one over on me. I know what this is supposed to be.
No,
I think one of my favorite moments too, I think it was during the Jinder Mahal heel run, where, you know, Jinder's supposed to be a heel and he's saying these things, but like everyone actually agrees with him, you know, like he's just like, oh, we're supposed to hate him because he's a different skin color than us. But then like everyone, fans are just like, no, he has legitimate reasons to be pissed. You know?
I because when Kaz pointed this out, I think on the TAWF Facebook discussion group, I think it was the promo, because these promos weren't working, because we're like, yeah, no, dude, we agree. Like most people are like, yeah, this makes sense. And so they end up having him do that, I think, like racist promo against Shinsuke Nakamura.
Yes.
Kind of making fun of how he talked.
Yeah.
Because they were like, we have to take this in some sort of direction. And then the crowd didn't even boo him or anything. They just stopped reacting because they were just uncomfortable at that point. Like, you can't have a heel who everything he says is completely justified and completely right. People agree with him. This all makes sense. This all checks out. And then they realize that, oh shit, we got to double back and change this. We have to get heat. We can't just say like, oh shit, you know what? Let's just run with this and like have people have their own reaction to him and kind of go from there. No, he has to be a heel. He's tall, he's brown, he's got to be a heel. So.
in Vince's eyes, that's the way he's thought for the past 40 years.
Yeah, he's Indian. Like, yes, he's Indian, but he's also from Calgary, dude. Like, he's lived here for years.
It's just like, and when we were all agreeing, like, yeah, this kind of all checks out. It's like, you would think WWE would realize, okay, well, if everybody thinks this is how everything's checking out, maybe we should go in a different direction moving forward. Instead, it's just the same old bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, the foreign heel thing is so played out. I can't believe they still do it. I mean, there's not really any foreign heels in WWE right now, is there? Like, whose sole character is like, I'm not from this country, I fucking hate you.
Oh, no, nobody.
Oh, technically Sami Zayn.
Hey.
Yeah, I guess, but he's white as a ghost.
Yes, that is true. But I guess they don't really play up like his actual his heritage, his ethnicity. It's just more they just make him like kind of a socialist. Again,
he's like Canadian.
A take on what someone would think like a Canadian of a Middle Eastern descent. Like, oh, well, I guess let's just make him a socialist, like an obnoxious like college kid. Like, it's like not a liberal, he's a socialist because he wants healthcare for people, and he thinks everything is a conspiracy by corporations to hold people down.
So at Wayne State, circa 2009.
Right, yeah, but I mean, it's not too far off the mark. But I don't know, man.
Vince always tries to capitalize on what conflicts are going on in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's worked so well.
Muhammad Hassan thing was a total terrorist 9/11 gimmick.
It wasn't that way at first, but again,
yeah,
it was one of those things where he would say shit and people were like, well, he's kind of got a point. Like, oh no, we have to turn this into a different direction. So they made it like a total terrorist thing where Daivari got carried out as a martyr after the Undertaker attack.
Yeah.
I think it's the same day. Yeah, the same. And fucking what's his name? Muhammad Hassan. His real name is like Mark Capani or something like that. He's an Italian dude from LA.
Yeah.
Oh, and where'd they build Muhammad Hassan from? Is his hometown, his fake hometown. Dearborn.
Was it Dearborn?
Was it really?
It was Dearborn, Michigan. Like, come on, guys. You can't be any more heavy-handed than that.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. It's kind of insane that they just had an Italian guy pretend to be a Muslim man.
He was billed from Detroit, just Detroit.
Oh, it was Detroit?
Yep, just Detroit.
Oh, it was definitely Dearborn at one point. I think on Day of Reckoning 2, the video game, they say he's from Dearborn.
Oh, that's
And I think they are like, oh, this is a little too on the nose. Let's just say Detroit. But who fucking knows what that means?
Yeah.
Dude, he's currently a junior high school principal.
Yes. Yeah. Didn't he, like, at one point on the subway or something, he stopped a mugger or whatever, too. He was in the news. And I remember them, like, mentioning that to him, too. And he was like, I'm actually Italian.
Yeah, he's like, I'm a teacher now. Like, I work in education. Like,
Yes.
I'm very far away from what that used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just, I guess I just don't understand why Vince just keeps going back to it. Like, the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s are not coming back. The world's evolved.
Because it worked. It like worked back then.
He's just an old man who's set in his ways at this point.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the one day where he finally does something and the shareholders are like, just get Hunter. He needs to run this. Like,
does he? Does he need to run this with how stale NXT's felt?
Yeah, seriously.
I don't even know. But I mean, I guess every good promotion goes through rough patches. Like, New Japan, even in, especially me and Kaz's fandom of it, like watching it consistently, like the last 10 years or so, Kaz?
Yeah. Give or take.
Yeah, they've even had some rough patches where we're like, this is okay. Or like, I didn't think that show was that great.
I mean, I feel like they're going through a little one right now, to be honest.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of like ROH. That might be my personal opinion, but after AEW was announced and between AEW and NXT picking up everyone, I felt like ROH got the short end of the stick and that playoff after All In and everything. Like, I thought, oh wow, they're gonna get more publicity and whatnot, but it just seemed like once all the talent went off in either direction, it was just, hey, what else can we do? And I mean, they did have moments, but yeah, there was little lulls. And like you said, with like MLW coming up and that getting more popular, and now GCW, a lot of people like really getting into that and everything. It really is reaching that point where wrestling is becoming, there's something for everyone. And people, those feds or whatever you want to call them, businesses, are starting to realize that too. But yeah, there are those stale moments.
I think NXT is getting stale because we always used to know like the champion, or at least anybody who was hovering around the champion, was going to go up to the main roster, and it really was more of a developmental, or guys came in and then we knew they were going to go up, and now it's like Adam Cole, who should have clearly been on the main roster a while ago, and all the guys from I'm drawing a blank now.
Undisputed
Era should have been on the main roster a while ago. They've been sitting around here for like 3 years too long, and we had to invent Pat McAfee as a heel, which he's been a great heel, but to drum up any more interest because it's been the same guys running through the division for 3 years.
Yeah, and now they're playing with different combinations of the Undisputed Era, like Roddy and Cole are a tag team in the Dusty Cup, because I think Bobby's hurt, and they're trying to push Kyle as a singles guy, because I think they've been planting the seeds of the Undisputed Era breakup, or at least Kyle getting kicked out or going out on his own. But I feel like they've been planting that seed for about a year now, and stuff would happen and stuff would kind of like change plans, because I know Ridge Holland was supposed to be in the mix of that for War Games, and then he got hurt, so then things had to get changed with Pat McAfee. And like to your point, Sean, yeah, these guys would have probably normally been called up, but because they put that show on Wednesday on USA, and I know it's to compete with AEW, the guys kind of have to stay there. They can't just try to keep rebuilding constantly with the show on USA. They have to build a fan base and have like consistent characters there until they can build up enough people where they can logically move those characters on. So it seems like a lot of people are floating in limbo. Like Damian Priest, I feel like should have already been on Raw or SmackDown. He was supposed to be on Raw or SmackDown, but I remember reading that Dave Meltzer got wind of Kevin Owens changing him showing up to be his friend in a tag match because Kevin Owens said, this makes no sense. I've never had really any interactions with him besides they both were in ROH at one point. Like they've never interacted. I don't think they've ever had a match together. It just didn't make sense for Priest to be Kevin Owens' buddy. Mm-hmm. And that's a good point. I'm glad that he did that because then he's just always going to be like Kevin Owens, like heater or sidekick or whatever. It's very weird.
Well, and then you got like Gargano and Ciampa have been there maybe 4 years too long.
Well, Gargano and Ciampa said that they'd never want to get called up. Ciampa, I could see just always floating around there because of his injuries in his neck and things like that.
Yeah, right.
But
yeah. I don't blame some of those guys either, though. I mean, I'm sure they're making some good money. I know at the time when NXT was more so developmental, they were kind of making less, but I'm sure some of those guys are making quite a bit more now.
But you see what they do with a lot of guys that they bring up most recently, like Keith
yeah.
Lee. I mean, dude was the hottest dude in NXT. They bring him up in a fucking skirt, whatever the fuck he was wearing.
It's like Muay Thai shorts.
Dude has a clean win over Randy Orton this year, and
they change his music. It's to some generic rock theme. I mean, he's got new music now, but even this past Monday, he's in a marquee match with Drew McIntyre for the title. They put on a good match. He loses, which, of course, I mean, we all thought that was going to happen. There was a lot of shine on him, but then it's totally taken away because Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he lost the match, and, like, that was it. There was nothing more of Keith Lee. Goldberg came out. So now what are they going to do with Keith Lee?
Like, he's just going to be in the Rumble and be a big guy that is a big threat and that people gang up and throw out because, obviously –
Yeah,
I think Braun's hurt. Brock's not around. So they'll have a couple of whatever horses they have.
I mean, a Keith Lee-Brock thing at Mania could work.
Yeah, it could. The Rumble this year, man, is really up in the air, which is kind of a good thing. I kind of like that. I feel like the last few years, it's been, like 2-3 people are like, okay, these guys are going to win. It's pretty obvious. Or like last year, we all knew that Brock, once he entered, was going to kick the shit out of a bunch of people. Like when we did that contest, it was a race to see who was going to get Brock because, if you got Brock, you're going to win, whether it's, counting eliminations or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I got Drew Mack with my number, thank goodness.
Yeah, you won.
Which, of course, the structure of that match was fantastic because it got whoever's going to eliminate Brock, which is Drew, over big time.
Yeah, right.
But, it's been fairly, not necessarily obvious, but you could cut it down to a handful of people who are probably going to win. And even like with things like the betting odds suddenly giving it away, which has always been very crazy to me because there's one year I didn't think Orton was going to win it at all. And I saw the betting odds and he was the favorite. I said, what the fuck? Okay, I guess he's going to win. I don't know what they're hearing for him to win it. And then he won it. So, it's always, kind of decided who's going to win. This year, I have no clue who's going to win. And then things are kind of in limbo with McIntyre having COVID.
Yeah, right.
I talked with Kaz. I think, what did I say? Like they might do it for the Rumble for the belt, but he won't be out that long. At least I don't think
so.
Yeah,
knock on wood.
They were already like promoting him and Goldberg.
Can I just figure out why Goldberg just gets to come back, win the title at the Rumble, and then carry it through Mania just to drop it?
They're trying to pop buy rates because
you think he's gonna beat Drew?
I'm saying like that's how he beat the Fiend. That's kind of been their MO with Goldberg, though. He just kind of comes in, wins the title, gets to carry it through Mania, and then
I'll be shocked if he beats. I guess I wouldn't be shocked, but I would be.
I mean, they already randomly had Drew drop the belt for no reason, just to have him win it back, because I think they were trying to pop the ratings by having him win it back on a Raw instead of just having him be a dominant champion and just carrying it all from Mania to Mania. and just being a dominant champion. They wanted him to be a star. And of course, I feel really bad for him because he didn't have his big moment in front of a crowd, which seems to kind of be the theme of his career. It's like the best laid plans always gone awry for him.
Yeah.
But I think also, too, they put themselves in the corner because with making Drew such a dominant fighting champion, he's beaten pretty much anyone that would really be considered a threat on Raw besides Bray. Bray is the only person that he hasn't linked up with. And, having to bring in Goldberg, I think, again, is to pop ratings because ratings haven't been that good. And that Legend show got a pretty decent rating. It still just leaves a bad taste in my mouth because, like Kaz was saying, Keith Lee lost, then he kind of just fucked off and didn't do anything. And then this storyline with Goldberg makes no sense because he keeps saying that Drew's been disrespectful to the Legends, but how? He was
he never said anything.
Yeah,
he was like weird.
He was dapping up Legends and showing them respect. He was like mugging for the camera with Hogan. Like he's been nothing but like a wonderful guy. Like he's one of the very few baby faces I've seen in WWE in the last fucking like 10, 12 years, besides maybe like Prime Batista, that actually seems like a smart baby face and doesn't seem like an asshole. He seems like just a cool dude.
Yeah.
Like he seems like a very logical person. Like he doesn't do a lot of dumb shit like a lot of faces have done in WWE in the past. It's just a weird feud. I mean, I think he should just Claymore Goldberg in like 30 seconds and beat him. Like I don't think they should fuck around with Goldberg even getting close to winning the title or putting Drew in any real danger. I think Drew should just run right through him because they were playing a dangerous game with his believability and the crowd, if crowds ever come back, like with people being able to get behind Drew, unless him losing leads to him turning heel, which I feel like they've already got enough heels, or with The Miz getting the briefcase back somehow, Goldberg and Drew have this knockdown, drag out fight, and Miz cashes in. I don't know. I don't like Goldberg. I don't like Goldberg in that match at all.
I'm also very upset that all I got was Otis surprisingly winning Money in the Bank to him drop it the briefcase to The Miz and his whole push just go to nothing.
That made no sense. I don't know why they put that on Otis. They should have either put it on The Miz from the start or just even if Otis was going to win it in the shocking upset, Otis should have they should have had people hot-shotting the briefcase instead of just Otis to Miz. Miz should have lost it to someone, got it back, lost it to someone else. That person loses to someone else. Like there are people just kind of hot-shotting it around. So the champion really has no clue who's going to be coming for it because he doesn't know who's going to have the briefcase at any given moment.
See, I was glad when they got it off Miz because then I was like, good, we can just forget about the Money in the Bank. There's no crowd. You know, the pop for the cash-in is what makes it. You know, getting it off Miz was a great idea. Then when they gave it back to him, I was like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why do we – I mean, I guess I don't understand WWE's reluctance to go full G1 with it and just make the person who has it defend it like a belt.
They have had people defend it like a belt a couple of times. I think RVD, they did briefcase versus Intercontinental title, I think, against Shelton Benjamin. So he had the Intercontinental title in the briefcase, I think, in that second Money in the Bank in 2006. But, yeah, that's a good point. I think that the briefcase should be defended like it's a belt. But WWE's worry might think that it's too close to what the 24/7 title is. But the 24/7 title means absolutely nothing at this point. So
it's just comical to watch our Truth lose it and then get it back.
They just invented a belt to give something for R-Truth to do because they love R-Truth. That's pretty much all it is.
To be fair, R-Truth is a very likable guy.
He is.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
100%. But also I feel like that belt could really be something different. Like I really think that belt, and they could still salvage it.
Oh, yeah.
I think that belt could be like a tertiary title, like a TV title, like a never open weight title. That it's a belt for the guys who might not necessarily get all the opportunities. It's to give them something to fight for. and maybe someone can parlay that into an intercontinental title shot or a heavyweight title shot and get some momentum going.
I feel like Vince was just 4 years too late on it. He finally saw the Iron Man heavy metalweight title and was like, yeah, that's what we need. Just need something like that.
I like the idea that Vince is a big DDT fan and follows that belt. Like I like like Vince is following along on his Instagram, looking at all the title changes. I like that idea. Like I love the idea of Vince McMahon even knowing how to work like a smartphone. That's even better.
I just think like he had this idea had to come to him from somewhere, because obviously he took like part of the hardcore title, which I think everybody was really hoping would come back, but obviously with the around performers' safety, we're going to start seeing less and less, weapons used and cages and everything like that for concussion protocol and everything. And I think he just didn't want to go into that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know when the title was first introduced, they said it was going to be a part of Raw that was going to be edgier, and they were turning the lights down. But then as soon as Mick Foley introduced the belt, he just left it in the ring and people had a race to crown the first champion. I was hoping that it would be, yes, maybe a gimmicky title, but it would be maybe Progress that does this, the Proteus Championship, where whoever holds the belt gets to decide how the belt is defended. So, like, if I become the Proteus champion, I get to say, like, all my matches are all going to be submission matches. That's the only way you could win the belt for me. You have to beat me by submission. If I could do something like that where the champion gets to make the rules, they could have done any number of things to be creative and make it different, and not necessarily the hardcore championship. Maybe someone that wins it does say, you know what, I'm going to make all my matches hardcore matches to give myself the advantage because I'm the champion. They didn't do that. They just said, like, it's the hardcore championship, but with none of the cool shit that makes the hardcore championship fun to watch. It's just a bunch of low-card guys rolling each other up and wearing disguises. Like a fucking shitty Dana Carvey movie.
Filler.
Yeah.
You gotta fill 3 hours of TV, and that takes a good chunk of it.
Hey man, they put the belt on Rob Gronkowski, so
Yeah, and then he had to vacate it.
Tom Brady came calling.
Wrestling's in a weird place right now.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the good things about it, though, right? Is once again, there's so much out there. You choose what you want to watch. Like,
For
sure. I seriously haven't watched any full WWE stuff in quite some time, actually. Like, I really get my news from you guys with all that stuff. There's not much. I don't seek it out. Unless there's something, a big moment or something, or there's a recommendation for it. But yeah, it definitely, I can understand now that where people are just like, just watch what you want to watch, because there's plenty out there to watch now. So that's a good thing.
I'm glad my prediction on this all came to not pass, because when this all started, we started going into full COVID and it was dragging on. I was like, these smaller promotions, WWE and AEW, are going to start picking them all up, and we're eventually going to become just two companies again, and eventually one of them's going to do the same thing WCW did and really mess up, and then we're going to come back to having one company. So I'm just kind of glad, all these smaller companies have said, you know what, we're doing fine without needing WWE to buy us out, or AEW or somebody else to be our lifeblood. So it is nice having to have the choices, because when this originally started dragging out, I was like, we're about ready to be down to nothing again. We're going to have two choices, and they're just going to be like 1A and 1B.
Oh, yeah. Well, it helps with Pro Wrestling Tees. It's like the only fans of wrestling, that's kind of like a lot of these independent guys' way of making extra income, and so to have those opportunities, moments like that, or to Twitch cameos and all that other stuff too, that really helps. So it's a blessing nowadays, especially during COVID, that some of these guys were still able to make ends meet when all these live events were canceled. I know, like I said, that was one of the biggest bummers for us around here was the GCW Horror Slam weekend. Like, it was nonstop action all weekend. There was wrestling matches, local and GCW, and a lot of the local fans were very, very excited for it until COVID hit. But luckily some of these guys have been able to still thrive and survive.
Yeah, it's been a very wacky, I guess, if we count from last March, about 10 months now, close to a year of still trying to figure out like the optimal way to have wrestling safely, keep the talent safe, but AEW is allowed to have a crowd because they're an outdoor venue and the crowd is spaced out, which I think also helps AEW's matches a lot because you can hear the crowd make noise and they're allowed to make noise, unlike New Japan. But it's been a very strange year for wrestling, getting this all figured out. I mean, it's been a very strange year for everything. I'm sure we could all agree to that. But I'm sure, like it always has, wrestling will find a way to survive and get through this. There's so many times when, people have asked me, like, how do people still even watch wrestling? Like, because it's just always going to find a way. There's always a slot for wrestling somewhere.
Yep.
Somehow, some way, wrestling will always find itself on some network at some crazy time slot, and it's going to build an audience and keep on going. It is like a fucking cockroach in a nuclear holocaust. They will never die.
It's just that nostalgia factor. I mean, think about it, like all of us watched it when we were kids, and I think like the majority of people have watched it when they were a kid at some point, even if it's just for 5 minutes, and it grabbed you for 5 minutes, and you just have that thought process on it where you're just like, you know what, I haven't watched in a while, wrestling. And then you kind of go back to it, even if you've left it for like 2-3 years, you kind of are like, I haven't seen it in a while. Let me see what's going on today. And then you see something, it just catches you, and you're like, then like for like a couple years straight, you're really watching it. And I think that's kind of what TAWF originally started on, was John got away from it for a while and turned it back on, and something caught him, and he ran through it for a couple years. And I think that happened to me living in North Carolina. When I first moved there, I was really into it, but as near the end of it, I was just kind of like, all right, I'm just watching some things through the motions, and I felt like the product had gone stale. But now, I'm kind of trying to pick back through it, and it's like more or less what's driving it is like seeing these old matches and like trying to watch things that I've never seen before, and it's re-sparking that interest. And I just have that hope that when a crowd can come back and we can, sit in a 90,000 person arena watching WrestleMania eventually, that it's like that rush that you had when you were a kid.
Yeah, the people change, the angles change, but the rules pretty much stay the same, right? So it's easy to jump back into.
I can honestly say, since I've become a fan, I never really got out of it.
Yeah,
I never took a break and said I can't watch this no more. And it's the one thing that I just have a love and passion for. Like, professional wrestling gets me going, gets the juices flowing.
Yeah.
Now there's been good, there's been bad, there's been this and that, but for me, I've just always I've always just been a fan ever since I can remember my first tape. I think it was like SummerSlam '89 VHS tape, like I found in my basement or something. I believe it was Hogan, Macho Man versus Hogan, Brutus Barber Beefcake versus Zeus and Macho Man was the main event.
Nice. R.I.P. Tommy Lister.
Yeah.